Daniel Hale's birthday started like any other workday, only heavier with silence. The office tower, usually full of footsteps, chatter, and clicking keyboards, had emptied by the evening. Everyone had already gone home to their families, their dinners, their own lives. But Daniel stayed behind, as he often did. To his employees, it seemed like dedication, the kind of drive expected from a CEO. In truth, Daniel was not busy with urgent work, he was simply avoiding the emptiness that waited for him outside. He leaned back in his leather chair, staring at the glowing city through his tall glass window. The view was spectacular, the kind most people dream about. Yet to him, it felt cold. The lights of other buildings sparkled like tiny celebrations, but none of them were for him. It was his birthday, but nobody in the office remembered. He hadn't told them, of course. People didn't expect the boss to need a cake or a song. He thought of his mother. She had been the one who never let his birthday slip by unnoticed. Every year she baked him a carrot cake with thick cream cheese frosting. She used to tell him, "No matter how tall you build your towers, Danny, you'll always need something sweet to remind you of home." Now she was gone, and with her went the tradition. The memory made his throat tight, but he quickly shook it off. He told himself he had chosen this life, this position. Success came with sacrifices. The sound of footsteps in the hallway broke his thoughts. Mr. Singh, the night security guard, passed by on his regular round. He offered a polite nod and a soft, "Good evening, sir." Daniel nodded back with a faint smile. Singh had worked in the building for years, but their conversations never went beyond greetings. Daniel sometimes wondered if Singh sensed his loneliness but respected his need for distance. After all, people always assumed the CEO wanted space. Feeling restless, Daniel left his office and wandered toward the break room. The place smelled faintly of coffee and cleaning spray. On one of the counters, he noticed paper plates, used cups, and a leftover plastic fork. Someone had celebrated earlier a farewell for an employee. He had skipped it, saying he was busy, though in truth he hadn't wanted to face the awkward small talk. Now, looking at the remains of their gathering, he felt a quiet ache. Even the simple joy of cake had passed him by. As he turned to leave, a small voice called from the doorway, "I saved you some cake, mister." Daniel froze. He looked up, and to his surprise, a little girl stood there. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old, with bright eyes and a serious expression, holding a napkin carefully in both hands. On the napkin sat a slightly messy slice of chocolate cake, the frosting smudged on one side. For a moment, Daniel didn't know what to say. He blinked at her, then finally managed, "For me." The girl nodded. "Yes. I thought maybe you didn't get any." Her voice was gentle, as if she had been waiting for this exact moment. Daniel walked closer, crouching a little so his tall frame didn't overwhelm her. "That's very kind of you," he said softly. "What's your name?" "Maya," she answered quickly. "My mom cleans here at night." She pointed down the hall. Everything made sense in that moment. Daniel realized this was one of the cleaning staff's children. Perhaps Maya's mother couldn't leave her alone at home, so she brought her along. And here was this little girl, offering him the most thoughtful gift he had received all day, a simple slice of cake. Daniel smiled, a real one this time. "Thank you, Maya. That means a lot to me." He reached for the cake, carefully taking it from her tiny hands. It wasn't the fancy kind his company might order for a boardroom, but to him, it looked better than anything he'd seen in years. Maya beamed at his words, then asked curiously, "Is it your birthday?" Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, it is." Her eyes widened. "Then you should have cake. You can't have a birthday without cake. That's what my grandma says." Her innocent certainty made Daniel chuckle. For years, he had told himself birthdays didn't matter, that work was enough. But standing there, Listening to this little girl, he felt a warm truth he couldn't ignore. Maybe he had been wrong. "Your grandma is very wise," he said. "Would you like to join me while I eat this?" Maya's face lit up, and she nodded eagerly. They walked together into the kitchen. Daniel found a plate and fork for the cake while Maya sat at one of the small tables. He poured her a glass of milk from the fridge, wanting to make it feel like a proper moment. As he sat down across from her, Daniel studied her simple drawing clutched in her other hand. It was done in crayons, a tall building under grey clouds, with a small sun peeking in the corner. At the top of the building was a tiny person. "Did you draw that?" he asked. Maya nodded. "It's this building. But I think it looks sad, so I tried to add the sun. This building needs more Sunday." Her words struck him. He looked at the picture again. To a child, their shining skyscraper didn't look powerful or impressive, it looked lonely, even gloomy. The thought lingered in his mind like a soft echo. Just then, Maya's mother appeared at the doorway, looking worried. "Maya, what are you doing? I told you not to disturb anyone." Her voice carried the exhaustion of someone working long hours. Before Maya could answer, Daniel stood and shook his head gently. "It's all right. She wasn't disturbing me. She was helping me celebrate." Alina, her mother, froze when she recognized him. "Oh, I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't know." Daniel raised a hand kindly. "Please. Don't apologize. She gave me something no one else did today. She gave me a birthday cake." The tension eased from Alina's shoulders. She nodded softly and thanked him for being understanding. Maya, still smiling, whispered to her mother, "See? Everyone needs cake on their birthday." Daniel finished the slice slowly, savoring it not for the taste but for the meaning. It wasn't just sugar and frosting, it was connection, kindness, and a reminder of what really mattered. When he returned to his office, cake still sweet on his tongue, he looked out at the city again. This time, the lights didn't feel quite as cold. He thought about the little girl, her drawing, and her simple words, "This building needs Sunday." For the first time in a long while, Daniel Hale wondered if his company and his life needed something more than profit charts and polished boardrooms. Maybe what it really needed was warmth, humanity, and a little slice of cake. Daniel carried the memory of the little girl's words with him through the weekend. "This building needs Sunday." The phrase kept echoing in his head, even when he tried to drown it out with reports, charts, and numbers. It was strange how a child's simple observation could shake the walls of a man who had built his life on strategy and control. When Monday arrived, the office was alive again with chatter, meetings, and the rhythm of corporate life. Daniel walked through the lobby, noticing details he had ignored before. The cleaning crew from Friday night wasn't there, but he could still picture Alina's tired smile and Maya's bright eyes. He thought about how invisible those workers must feel during the day when executives marched past without a second glance. In the boardroom that morning, his leadership team gathered around the long glass table. They talked about quarterly profits, investor expectations, and the next expansion strategy. Daniel listened, but his mind kept drifting back to the slice of cake. For the first time in years, the spreadsheets in front of him felt incomplete. They told the story of money, not people. At lunch, instead of retreating to his private office as usual, Daniel went down to the cafeteria. Employees were surprised to see him in line, holding a tray just like everyone else. Some gave polite nods, others whispered curiously. He noticed the way workers sat in small groups, chatting about their families, weekend outings, or upcoming birthdays. No one invited him to sit, but that wasn't their fault. He had built walls around himself for years. He ate quickly, then left, but the sight of their simple camaraderie left him restless. That evening, as the day staff cleared out, Daniel lingered again. He wanted to see the people who came when the building went quiet. Sure enough, the cleaning crew arrived, wheeling their carts and buckets. He walked slowly toward the break room, unsure of what he was doing. There he saw Alina, carefully wiping tables, and Maya, sitting in the corner with crayons spread out on the table. Maya noticed him first. "Hi, mister. Did you like the cake?" she asked, cheerful as ever. Daniel smiled. "Yes, I did. It was the best cake I've had in a very long time." "Thank you again." Alina looked up, startled. "Good evening, sir. I hope Maya wasn't bothering you last time. She just likes to talk." "She wasn't bothering me at all," Daniel assured her. "She reminded me of something important." Maya giggled. "I told you, Mama. Everyone needs cake." Daniel pulled up a chair beside her. "What are you drawing today?" She showed him a new picture, this time, the building again, but with brighter colors. She had added people inside the windows, little stick figures waving and smiling. Above them was a large, yellow sundae. "I thought maybe it should be happier," Maya explained. Daniel stared at the drawing. Something in him softened, a place he had long kept hidden. "It's perfect," he said. As the evening went on, Daniel stayed in the break room, talking with Alina and the other cleaners. They were hesitant at first. Most had never exchanged more than a greeting with the CEO. But slowly, they began to share small pieces of their lives. One man spoke about taking 3 buses to get to work. Another woman mentioned her husband's health struggles. Alina admitted that the shuttle program, which once helped the night staff get home, had been cut last year, making her commute more difficult. Daniel listened, really listened, for the first time. Their stories were not complaints, they were simply truths of lives lived quietly in the shadows of his company's success. He felt a pang of guilt when he realized he had signed the papers that ended the shuttle program without a second thought. On the page, it had been a cost-saving measure. In reality, it was hardship for people who already carried enough burdens. When the conversation ended, Daniel thanked them sincerely. "You've given me more insight tonight than I've received in some of my biggest meetings," he said. The workers smiled politely, perhaps unsure if he truly meant it. But he did. That night, back in his office, Daniel stared at his reflection in the darkened window. He wasn't just seeing a CEO in a tailored suit. He was seeing a man who had forgotten how to connect, who had hidden behind numbers while real people carried the weight of his decisions. Maya's innocent kindness had cracked something open, and now he couldn't ignore it. The next day, Daniel made small but deliberate changes. He sent an email to his assistant asking for a list of all staff birthdays. He instructed the cafeteria manager to ensure leftover meals were no longer thrown away but donated to a local shelter. He asked HR to review the possibility of reinstating the shuttle program. When his leadership team saw these changes on the agenda, they were surprised. One executive raised an eyebrow. "With all respect, Daniel, is this really the best use of our resources? These aren't big-ticket items." Daniel's voice was calm but firm. "Sometimes it's the small things that define who we are as a company. We've been efficient, yes. But we've forgotten to be human. That needs to change." The room went quiet. Some looked skeptical, others thoughtful. Daniel knew it wouldn't be easy to shift the culture, but he also knew it had to start with him. Later in the week, he walked into the cafeteria again, this time carrying a piece of cake from the staff lounge. He sat down at a random table where a few employees were chatting. At first, they were stiff with surprise, but soon the ice broke. Someone asked about his favorite cake, and he admitted it was carrot cake, his mother's recipe. Laughter rippled through the table as others shared their own favorites. For the first time in years, Daniel felt like part of the group, not just the figure at the top. As the days went on, he made a habit of greeting people by name, learning small details about their lives. He found himself looking forward to those moments more than board meetings. And each evening, when the office grew quiet, he often checked in on the night crew. Maya was always there with a new drawing, each one brighter than the last. One evening, she asked him directly, "Mister, are you less lonely now?" The question caught him off guard. He thought for a long moment, then answered honestly. "Yes, Maya. I think I am." She smiled, satisfied with the answer, and handed him another drawing. This one showed a birthday cake with many candles, surrounded by smiling faces. Daniel felt his chest tighten, but it wasn't loneliness this time. It was gratitude. He kept the drawing on his desk, right beside the pile of reports and spreadsheets. Whenever the numbers began to blur together, he looked at it and remembered what mattered most. And quietly, without making a grand announcement, he decided that this year would not be like the others. He would no longer measure success only by profits. He would measure it by the warmth inside the building, by the sun Maya said it needed, and by the smiles of the people who worked there. The following evening, Daniel decided to do something he had never done before in all his years as CEO. Instead of closing his office door and burying himself in reports, he walked slowly to the break room carrying a small box. Inside was a simple chocolate cake he had picked up from a nearby bakery. It wasn't anything fancy, but to him it carried an important meaning. He wanted to share it. When he entered, the night crew looked up in surprise. They weren't used to the boss appearing during their shift, let alone carrying a cake. Maya's eyes lit up immediately. "Mister, did you bring that for us?" she asked, almost bouncing in her chair. Daniel laughed softly. "Yes, I thought we could all have a little cake together tonight. I can't eat it all by myself." The workers exchanged glances. Some smiled, others looked uncertain, as if they weren't sure it was truly meant for them. But when Daniel set the cake on the table and began cutting slices, their hesitation faded. Soon everyone was gathered around, holding paper plates and laughing gently as Maya sang a cheerful birthday tune again, even though his birthday had already passed. As they ate, conversation started to flow. One man, Carlos, mentioned how hard it was to get home late at night without the company shuttle. He explained that sometimes he had to wait more than an hour for the bus, and in the winter the cold was unbearable. Another woman, Lillian, said the strict rule against taking leftover food home often felt wasteful. "We see trays of sandwiches and fruit thrown away every week," she said quietly. "It could feed someone who really needs it." Daniel listened intently, fork paused in his hand. None of them spoke with anger or complaint. They spoke with quiet honesty, sharing the challenges that came with their jobs. He realized that these were the same people whose efforts kept the building shining, the desks spotless, the atmosphere professional. Yet their voices had never reached the boardroom. Maya, who had been listening too, leaned toward Daniel. "Why don't you let them take the food home? That would be nice." Her innocent tone made everyone chuckle, but her question hung in the air. Daniel cleared his throat and answered gently, "You're right, Maya. It would be nice. I think it's something we need to change." The workers glanced at each other, surprised by his response. For years they had seen rules written on paper without ever expecting them to shift. But Daniel's eyes told them he wasn't just making small talk. He meant it. As the cake was finished and the group slowly returned to their duties, Daniel sat back with a quiet smile. For the first time, the building didn't feel cold. It felt alive, full of voices and stories that deserved to be heard. Later that night, he returned to his office with a notebook in hand. He wrote down the things he had learned: restore the late-night shuttle, revise food donation rules, create opportunities to hear from all staff, not just executives. He underlined the last point twice. Leadership, he realized, wasn't about staying above others. It was about standing among them. The next morning, Daniel carried this new energy into his leadership meeting. He spoke calmly but with conviction. "We've been focusing too much on cutting costs without seeing how it affects our people," he said. "We need to bring back the shuttle service. We need to stop throwing away food that could help others." And I want to hold open sessions where employees at every level can share their thoughts directly." The room fell silent. A few executives shifted uncomfortably. One finally asked, "Sir, are these really priorities for the company right now? Investors are expecting growth, not cafeteria changes." Daniel looked around the table. "Growth means nothing if the people who make it possible feel invisible. We can do both. We can grow, and we can care." The firmness in his voice left no room for argument. Slowly, heads began to nod. The decisions were approved, at least on a trial basis. That evening, when the cleaning crew returned, Daniel greeted them warmly and shared the news. Their gratitude was quiet but genuine. Alina's eyes softened with relief when she heard about the shuttle returning. "That will help so much," she whispered. Maya, of course, was the most excited. She clapped her hands and said, "See, Mama. I told you the mister listens." Daniel smiled at her, humbled by the truth in her words. He realized that all of this had begun because a little girl had saved him a piece of cake on a lonely birthday night. Back in his office, Daniel placed her drawing on the shelf where he could see it clearly. The tall building, once drawn grey and lonely, now looked brighter every time he glanced at it. And he knew this was only the beginning. The building didn't just need sun, it needed people who felt valued inside its walls. From that night onward, Daniel made it a personal mission to bring more light into the company, one small act at a time. Daniel knew that change on paper was only the first step. Policies could be written, but if people didn't feel the difference in their daily lives, the effort would mean nothing. He carried that thought with him when he walked into the next leadership meeting. This time, he didn't bring a thick stack of reports or slides. Instead, he brought Maya's drawing. He set it down in the middle of the polished table, where the company's top executives could see. The drawing showed their tall building, no longer grey and lonely but bright with sun and little figures smiling inside. "This," Daniel said quietly, "is what our company should feel like." At first, there was silence. Some executives shifted uncomfortably, clearly unsure of why the CEO had brought a child's crayon art to a serious meeting. But Daniel's voice was calm and steady as he continued. "I want us to look at this picture and ask ourselves, do our people feel seen? Do they feel like they belong here? If the answer is no, then we still have work to do." He outlined the new initiatives, restoring the late-night shuttle, partnering with shelters for leftover food, and creating open office hours where employees from every level could speak directly to leadership. One executive frowned. "These changes will cost money," he argued. Daniel leaned forward. "So does turnover. So does low morale. So does a culture where people feel invisible. But when employees feel valued, they work with energy, they stay longer, and they build a company that thrives. If we want long-term growth, this is not a cost, it's an investment." The discussion that followed was spirited. Some were cautious, others enthusiastic, but Daniel stood firm. In the end, the team agreed to move forward with the pilot programs. The very next week, visible changes began. Flyers appeared in the lobby and cafeteria announcing the return of the shuttle service. An email went out about food donations starting immediately. HR introduced the concept of Friday open hour with the CEO, where anyone could drop by to share ideas or concerns. Daniel didn't just leave the work to others. He personally visited different floors during the day, striking up conversations with employees. At first, they were surprised and nervous. Many had only ever seen him in formal speeches or distant photos. But when they realized he was genuinely listening, asking about their projects, their families, even their favorite meals, they began to open up. In the evenings, he often stopped by when the night crew worked. He greeted them warmly, calling them by name. Maya was always there, proudly showing him her newest drawings. One night she drew a picture of the cafeteria with a large cake in the center and people from different backgrounds sitting together. "This is how birthdays should be," she told him. Inspired by her words, Daniel approved a new idea suggested by the cafeteria manager, a monthly everyone's birthday celebration in the lounge. On those days, a simple cake would be shared by anyone who wanted to join, no RSVP required. The first time it happened, dozens of employees showed up. Some laughed, some sang, and others simply enjoyed being part of something warm and human. Daniel stood quietly at the back, watching the smiles spread across the room, and felt a deep satisfaction. One afternoon, while reviewing the reports of these new programs, Daniel noticed something interesting. Employee turnover had begun to drop. The surveys HR conducted showed a rise in satisfaction and trust. For the first time in years, people weren't just working for paychecks, they were working in a place that felt like a community. But the most important change wasn't in numbers. It was in the atmosphere. In hallways, he noticed more greetings exchanged. In meetings, employees spoke up with more confidence. In the cafeteria, workers from different departments mingled more often. The building itself seemed lighter, as though Maya's sun had finally begun to shine through the glass walls. Daniel had also started a personal tradition. He framed each of Maya's drawings and placed them around his office. Visitors sometimes asked why a CEO's office had children's art on the walls. He always smiled and replied, "Because these remind me what real leadership looks like." One Friday, during the open office hour, an employee nervously stepped into his office. She was young, working in an entry-level role, and she clutched a notebook in her hands. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said softly. "I used to feel like no one noticed us. But now, things feel different. Even small changes mean a lot." Daniel stood and shook her hand warmly. "Thank you for telling me. That's how I'll know we're moving in the right direction." As she left, he thought again of how much had shifted since that lonely night on his birthday. One small slice of cake had started a chain of change larger than he ever imagined. And in his heart, he knew the work was not finished. This was only the beginning of building a culture where Daniel's next birthday arrived almost without him realizing it. The year had passed quickly, filled with new rhythms, new traditions, and new energy inside the company. What had once been a cold tower of glass and silence was now a place where people felt they belonged. He no longer dreaded his birthday. This time, he looked forward to it not for the gifts or the cake, but for the people around him. On the morning of his birthday, he walked into the office lobby as usual. But instead of the usual polite nods, he was met with warm greetings. Employees smiled and said, "Happy birthday, Mr. Hale." Some even stopped to shake his hand. Word had spread, because this year, birthdays were celebrated openly, no matter whose they were. At lunchtime, Daniel made his way to the cafeteria. A group of employees were already there, preparing a surprise. On a table in the center stood a large carrot cake, decorated with white frosting and orange swirls. A small card read, "Happy birthday, Daniel. Thank you for bringing back the Sunday." He felt his chest tighten, but it wasn't loneliness, it was joy. For the first time in years, his birthday didn't feel empty. It felt full. As the employees gathered, someone began to sing softly. Soon the whole room joined in, their voices filling the space. Daniel laughed, a sound he hadn't heard from himself in a long time. When the song ended, he blew out the candles with a simple wish, that the warmth in the room would last beyond this day. Later that evening, when most of the staff had gone home, Daniel stayed behind. He wanted to see the night crew again. Sure enough, Alina and her co-workers arrived with their cleaning carts, and Maya skipped alongside her mother. In her hands, she carried a small folded piece of paper. "Mister," she called, rushing to him. "We saved you some cake again." Daniel chuckled as she handed him the paper. When he unfolded it, he found a drawing of a huge birthday cake surrounded by smiling people holding hands. On top of the cake was a figure that looked a lot like him, wearing a party hat. "It's beautiful," he told her. Thank you, Maya. You've given me the best gift again. Alina smiled softly, watching the exchange. She insisted we make something for you. She said you shouldn't ever be alone on your birthday. Daniel's heart swelled. He bent down so he was eye level with Maya. You know, you changed everything, he said gently. Because of you, this whole building feels different now. Maya tilted her head. Because of the cake. He nodded. Yes. Because you shared your cake with me, I learned how important it is to share with others. You reminded me that even big buildings and busy people need kindness. Maya grinned proudly, as if she had always known this truth. Over the following weeks, Daniel made sure the changes they had started were not temporary. The shuttle program became a permanent part of the budget. The partnership with local shelters expanded, with the company donating food and supplies regularly. The open office hours became popular, with employees lining up to share ideas and stories. The cultural shift was clear. In the lobby, a community board now displayed staff birthdays, small achievements, and thank you notes. People signed cards for one another, celebrated promotions, and offered support in difficult times. The company's reputation also began to shine outside its walls. Clients and partners noticed the difference in employee energy, and investors were impressed by the combination of profit and purpose. But for Daniel, the greatest reward was personal. He no longer dreaded evenings alone in his office. He often stayed not out of loneliness, but because he enjoyed talking to the night crew, or sharing a laugh with the cafeteria staff. His office, once cold and formal, now felt warm with Maya's framed drawings and the energy of countless conversations. One afternoon, he addressed a gathering of employees in the lounge. He spoke simply, without a script. A year ago, I spent my birthday alone, thinking success meant numbers on a page. But then a little girl saved me a slice of cake, and everything changed. She reminded me that leadership isn't about distance, it's about closeness. It's about listening, sharing, and caring. Good business starts with good care. Thank you for teaching me that. The room erupted in applause, not the polite kind, but the genuine kind that comes from shared respect. Daniel stepped back, humbled, and felt a quiet peace settle over him. As the crowd dispersed, Maya tugged at his sleeve. Next year, can we save you more cake? She asked with a mischievous smile. Daniel laughed, kneeling down. Yes, Maya. But only if you promise to share it with me. She nodded eagerly, sealing the deal. And so, what began as a lonely birthday in a quiet office became a story of transformation. A little girl's simple kindness had lit a spark that grew into a culture of warmth and belonging. The building no longer stood as a cold tower of glass, but as a place filled with sun just as Maya had drawn it. In the end, Daniel kept one small item in his desk drawer, the old plastic fork he had seen in the break room on that first night. To anyone else, it was meaningless. But to him, it was a reminder that one small act of kindness could open the door to great change. And every time he looked at it, he smiled, knowing that sometimes the biggest lessons in life come not from boardrooms or balance sheets, but from a child offering a slice of cake.